20-year marriage down the drain. We've been married for almost 20 years. I have had 2 affairs during this time. The first one was early in the marriage, but we had been going through an extremely bad time and we separated and filed for a divorce before I started seeing someone, but my spouse still felt it was cheating. I don't argue that point with him. However, we reconciled and since then we have had an otherwise good marriage. Until a little over a year ago, I fully accept responsibility for my actions. However, there were issues going on within me that enabled me to make the choices I made. We again were contemplating divorce, but not because I didn't love my spouse or want to be with him, but felt that he would be better off without me in his life. Family issues. Without going into further details, I was in a massive depression and I was feeling at an all-time low in my otherwise wonderful life. So, the affair, I met someone whom I had known many years ago. I had flown to see one of my best friends for a holiday and met this person as well. The first time we met, nothing happened. It was the second, third, and fourth visit that things took place. It was a physical relationship more than an emotional relationship, and it took place over the course of 6 months. We texted more than anything else. Rarely did we email or have phone conversations. I realized after that last visit that this was wrong and not fair to my spouse, family, the other person, and myself. So, I ended it and focused on my therapy sessions and trying to heal myself from other situations that had previously occurred in my life. After 5 months of therapy and a lot of support from my spouse, I decided that our marriage was worth saving and working on. He never really wanted our marriage to end but was not sure what to do with the situation. So, in Jan 12 we made the choice to recommit to our marriage and make it better than ever. We have done that. I never told him about the affair, as at the time I felt what he didn't know didn't hurt him. But every day I was sorely tempted to tell him because I generally do not lie to my husband and I felt horrible that I was living with this and not being honest. I should mention that when I ended this relationship I was involved in, I confessed all to a family member. She too encouraged me to keep this to myself as she loves both of us and wanted us to stay together and neither of us was sure how this would go over. So, affair ended, marriage was healing and getting better than ever. And then I had a fight with the family member who knew my secret. She threatened to tell all to my spouse and was even trying to get it out so my children could hear this. I was able to send my children to a friend's house and got them out of the situation. This family member is going through a divorce and was living with us until yesterday. So, with her threatening to tell, I decided it would be better to hear from me than from her. So, I called my spouse and had him come home to confess, which I did. He was hurt and quite shocked and I was emotionally beside myself and well, we both were going through a lot of emotion. Last night after my spouse had a few hours to digest all this information, he called me to tell me he wanted to stay in our marriage and work through this. I was shocked, scared and elated all at the same time. This was the news I wanted to desperately hear as I do not want to part from my marriage. We've been talking and texting as we normally would, but because he is working, we aren't really discussing the problems at hand. I know when he comes home this week for a month, we will discuss and I want that. He didn't ask me a lot of questions about the affair, and I didn't offer any details. I felt at the time knowing it happened was enough pain for a day and I am guessing he thought the same. I will answer any questions he presents to me when he wants to hear the answers, but the family member wants to talk to him and I have no idea what she will say. I'm worried that she will change his mind with giving him details and some incorrect ones as she is very, very angry with me. He has said though, that he doesn't want to hear about it from her and that it is between us and that is what he will say. I believe that, but still very worried. I'm a wreck. He is a wreck. I feel physically ill, emotionally trying to hold on so I don't fall back into a massive depression and of course, a monumental amount of guilt. Then I feel horrible for feeling miserable when he must be feeling worse than I am. I am hopeful that he will want to stay committed and work toward healing our relationship. I can't imagine my life without him. He's a very good man and a great father and always my best friend. He even told me yesterday he feels for me for feeling so awful, and that just made me feel even worse. He was more worried about my feelings than his own. Don't get me wrong, he feels horrible and he is hurt beyond words and I know this. But what a fool I was. This is the most difficult thing we have had to endure and after so many years of dedication to our marriage. I do not try to justify my choices, but I don't know what to do. He's coming home tomorrow night and we have both discussed feeling weird when he does. I don't want to act normal for fear that he will think I am not taking this seriously and thinking it's all under the rug. I don't want to act unnormal for fear of making him feel insecure. He said he's not sure how he will feel and how he would like for me to behave. He left it at we will see what happens. I keep reassuring him I am exactly where I want to be and that I love him. He's been telling me he loves me too and we will work through this. Also, I have not had contact with the other person in over a year. We do not communicate on any level. Any advice on how to proceed would be appreciated. I have been tested. Although I did use protection every time, I am going to see my therapist later this week, and I have said I would seek MC if my spouse wanted to do that. He hasn't said if he does or doesn't at this time. Although I recommend it. He has always been averse to counseling but understood my need for it over the last 18 months. Believe me, I understand there is no valid reasoning for my choices, and I am certainly not putting any blame on my spouse for this. I own this 100% as all my doing. I do find my husband extremely attractive, intelligent, and sexy. We do not have bedroom relations as often as maybe we should or could, but there have never been any complaints in that department other than frequency. But our lack of frequency has not been because of unattraction, just that we have 3 children who are extremely active in and outside of school, and we are often out to practices or sporting events till 9 to 10 at night and most weekends. When we do have free time, we are working on our house or we are just vegging out with each and enjoying quiet time and relaxing. I am honestly surprised at his willingness to stay in our marriage and work through this. I wish there was something I could do at this moment to make things right, but I know time is what it will take. I just am so lost and uncertain of how to behave and act with him. I will answer any questions he presents to me and answer him with all honesty. I hate that I may have to do this, but I want to do whatever it takes to get through this. The affair was over a year ago and ended shortly after it began, although I am extremely grateful at his commitment to our marriage. It makes me feel even worse that he is so willing to work on things. We just spoke moments ago and he told me he was looking forward to coming home tomorrow night. He's not ignoring the situation per se, but hearing him sound so sad and hurt but looking forward to seeing me is so painful. The affair was out of state, and not even a neighboring state. I do not communicate on any level with that person and haven't since it ended. I am a stay-at-home mom and I haven't traveled without him since the affair. If I am not with him in person, we are usually texting or talking on the phone. I am willing to do whatever he needs me to do, but given all this I know it will be hard for him to trust me again. I do not feel disgust of lack of respect for his willingness to stay. I am so grateful that he has said these words and the relief it brings. The fact he is so willing, and I feel I don't deserve that after forgiving the first time. I feel guilty for feeling some sort of relief, and it's a reminder of how stupid and disrespectful I was to begin with. A testament to me at how lucky and blessed I am to have such a man in my life. At the time our marriage was in a bad place, I felt he was having an affair. I learned later that was not the case. But at the time I thought it was so, and I had talked to him about it. I guess I should say at this time, he works out of the country and has for over 15 years. He is gone for a month at a time, if not longer, depending on the demands of his job. Also, when this affair took place, my end, not only did I feel he was having one, I also was in a depression where I felt that he deserved someone better than me. At the time I had just taken a serious verbal beating from my mother and from his sister. It sent me into an awful hell, not his fault. I just had crappy coping skills and was not handling the verbal abuse that I had been suffering from all my life with my mother and for the better part of our marriage with his sister. He is gone every other month for work, so, when he is at home, he is here 24/7 with us. We know the frequency isn't to our liking, so we do try to make time as often as we can, of course. This was in the last 8 months. We knew this was part of the breakdown in our relationship and we have been working on it. Now, I don't know what will happen, since admitting to my affair is obviously a major setback to what was otherwise a very lovely and happy relationship. I've been Googling how a marriage can survive an affair and found some helpful things, but very little on how the guilty party should proceed. I have apologized constantly and I've been telling him how much he means to me and how much I love him from the moment I confessed. I also have taken all responsibility and have made no attempts to give excuses for my choices. Although we are both aware at the time of the affair I was not in my normal state of mind and was an emotional wreck, that still doesn't excuse me from the choice I made. My relationship with my friend fell apart due to other issues not related to my affair. Although she knew about it, the reason for the end of our friendship was lifestyle choices and it was mutual. We also do not communicate any longer. Plus, she was advocating the affair and that was not something I needed to hear when I was trying to focus on my personal depression and healing, as well as trying to determine the future of my marriage, and felt if I did recommit to my marriage, she would be toxic and unhealthy. I do not want to do this again. I wasn't looking for this to happen either time. The first, we were separated and filed for a divorce and living in separate states. This one wasn't just because I needed attention or some other reason. I truly felt as if my marriage and life as I knew it to be was over and going into a different direction. I do admit my coping skills in the past with situations were less than wonderful. After months of therapy and working diligently to learn coping tools and communication tools, things have been great. Yes, I admit I was a coward to not tell him from the beginning, and I contemplated telling him before this. I just was a coward, chicken crap, what have you, the list is long I'm sure. But that's the truth. I was scared and was so happy with the direction we have been going in. I didn't want to ruin it. I do not blame my family member for threatening to out my affair. Fact is, if I hadn't done it, there would be nothing to out. I do not like or appreciate her motivation. But that's a situation unto itself entirely, and I'm more concerned with helping my husband and our marriage survive. He came home this evening. We did some talking. He says he is really committed to working through this and believes we will overcome this. He's not up for much discussion about this, and I told him that he can't close it off and act like he doesn't know that we need to talk, but we will move at his pace and what is comfortable with him. Not sure if that is the right direction, but right now, I want to help him any way I can. However, I am seeing my own therapist next week to start my own process with recovering myself and our relationship. I need to deal with the fact that this has happened twice in our relationship under extremely emotional times in our relationship and figure out why when the going gets extremely rough I turn away from him and our marriage. I also need to know how to help him with any issues he may have with this. He is still saying he doesn't want to know anything more than what he already does. I admit I'm relieved on the one hand, but feel like a shoe is waiting to be dropped. I offered to discuss freely on my own without prompting from him. But he told me he really wanted to just enjoy being home and focus on moving forward. He said, I know we have to talk and deal with this, but not tonight. I said, okay, I understand, but reminded him to not shut it down. He said it's not that he's shutting it down, but when it comes to it, he knows it happened. He knows when and where. He knows the why it happened at all. He said we've worked hard to get where we've been for a while now, and he doesn't want to work backwards. It makes a bit of sense. But as I said, feel like a shoe will drop, and I'm preparing myself for that event. It was over by the time I was fully into my therapy and was trying to work on coping skills and other reasons that I was going to therapy. In my mind at the time, it was an event that occurred while I was convinced my life was moving in a different direction. I will type more about the therapy and why I was in it. Just hard to relive that year of my life. I understand that you feel it hasn't been addressed, but it has. Just haven't gone into all that on here. So far, we have had little discussion about the confession I made. He is still saying he knows what he needs to know and that he was committed to our marriage. I have asked about him having an affair. He replies was a resounding no. I also asked if he was sure about his commitment. Could he possibly be staying with me until it's an appropriate time to leave the relationship, to which he said no. I believe him, but I am not so confident at this time, obviously given the circumstance of the past week. I have mixed feelings about these things. Part of me isn't wanting to rock the boat, and part of me is wondering if he would tell me the truth, which is a hard concept to swallow considering the confession that I just made. So, for the now, we are doing all right, all things considered. It's just getting hard to act normal. So, do I think he is in denial? No, I believe he understands and accepts the information he was told. Do I think he is ignoring things? To a certain extent, but I don't want to push, and I want him to move at his own pace, with me willing to answer any questions he may have when he is ready to ask. I think since he's not asking any questions, that has me concerned more than anything. Not so many details per se, but just anything. He swears he's be so happy with me this year that he doesn't feel the need to regress into unhappiness. Not those exact words, but it's basically the translation. Story 2. Background. I am nearly 24 years old. I met my husband, who is 6 years older than me, through a mutual family friend 2 years ago in May. We met virtually before I finally met him in person. He lived in another state. I wouldn't say I fell in love with him. I had been in love before, but I definitely developed strong feelings. We got along really well. We come from the same cultural background, speak the same languages, have similar religious and political beliefs, similar values. Neither of our parents are divorced, and we are both educated. I figured from a scientific perspective, this union looked really promising. Either way, our communication problem started after 9 to 10 months of being together. We were legally married. He was growing distant, and he wasn't calling, texting as frequently, and was taking too long to reply to my texts. I tried talking to him about it. I told him how important it was for me that we maintain communication throughout the day, and that he would need to let me know if he was going to be busy. Then, things took a turn for the worse when he lost his job the week of the wedding reception in July last year. We started fighting on our honeymoon, and he was already panicking about the finances. The tension just kept growing after that. He had just bought us new phones, and he spent much of his waking time on the phone even during our trip. It seemed like he wasn't trying to engage me and was using it as a distraction and to avoid intimacy. In the first 3 months together, we moved 3 times. At this time, I was really homesick and exhausted from the feeling of instability. I got really sick in his home state and developed severe allergies, which made things even worse for me. We also continued to fight about finances. I'm frugal, but by my standards he's pretty cheap. I continued to feel that he was emotionally unavailable and felt neglected. I kept looking for jobs too and made that a priority, but had no luck finding anything in his state. I found a job back in my home state and moved back in with my parents in mid-November. I found an apartment and he moved back in with me in January. Over the next 6 months, he kept going back to visit his family, at times spending 2 weeks away. I was working full-time and had a part-time job after work 3 days of the week. He complained that he didn't know anyone here, etc. I told him that had I found a job in his home state we would have stayed there. But this is where my connections are and this is where I was able to get a job. It just got worse. He started spending all day watching the news and TV. He wasn't looking for a job, which made me very resentful. There were times when I'd come home, and everything, him included, would be exactly as I'd left it. There were just very superficial interactions. He would say that there was nothing to talk about since he's not doing much. He gained a lot of weight. 40 pounds. I also put on some weight and so I suggested we go to the gym. I figured he had so much time on his hands he could make that his hobby since he was into working out before. But he didn't, obviously. Our physical life suffered, and on a good week we'd have bond once. It felt like he was even in bed. He just wasn't enthusiastic about anything and would often tell me he was tired, sleepy when I initiated. It was extremely frustrating and I stopped getting turned on at all even while having a good time, to the point that I avoid sleeping with him now. He rarely caresses me unless he wants a good time, which is infrequent. At times I would question my expectations because he kept accusing me of being so negative. I would alternate between feeling guilty that I am not more supportive of him and more sensitive to his feelings, and between feeling immense resentment that he was sulking, shutting me out, and behaving like a child, not taking responsibility. One day I suggested we go to couples counseling, and he adamantly refused. I felt that I was going crazy, because he kept telling me that I wasn't appreciating what he was doing, that I started to withdraw myself emotionally. I stopped even caring if he made the effort to communicate with me. In the beginning of May I told him we'd either go to counseling or I want a divorce. I said it very calmly. I told him it's either or. He told me that if I wanted a divorce I could keep dreaming. I told him, well, I'm giving you the option. A few weeks later he was away again. I called him and told him not to come back, that I wanted a separation. He got angry initially, then begged and pleaded, told me to give him a chance. I said no. He came back anyway and I caved in. That week, he was so tender and loving. It's like he knew exactly how to touch me and how to talk to me, but I knew we'd go back to the same routine. I kept reminding him about counseling, but he would literally ignore me, or he'd say, "Why do we need a third party to solve our problems?" A few weeks before our anniversary I told him I only wanted a card, in my heart. I knew he wasn't going to do it, and I was right. I even reminded him, but he didn't get me a card. I was livid. I was devastated. At this point, I just wanted to leave. I couldn't understand how he would not honor that simple request if he truly loved me. Not the first time either. I then read something online and realized that a lot of his behavior is passive-aggressive. And I think that is one example of many in which I tell him clearly what I want, expect, and he purposely doesn't do it. My mother insisted that I don't leave him until we try MC, which he was refusing, and until he started working. I went to a counselor on my own. I told her that I was pretty sure that I wanted a divorce because of our different mindsets when it comes to money and his inability to show me the affection that I need. Funny thing is, I told him that I went on my own, and he finally agreed to go together. When he agreed, I was disappointed. I had checked out emotionally. The counselor suggested we come either way, so fast forward to September, and my H started working part-time and we have been to at least 6 sessions of MC together. There has been an improvement, but we are still constantly bickering. He isn't making as big of a change as I need. He also really neglects his health. Won't eat well, which bothers me on a daily basis. The problem is, he is most likely moving back to his home state as he is being offered a job there. I told him several days ago that I am not invested enough at this point to move back with him, in addition to the fact that I get severely sick over there. What really scares me is that we fell into a rut less than a year into the marriage. What will happen down the road when responsibilities increase? He said, "Yeah, but how many couples went through what we went through?" I said, "Yes, but look at how much it affected our relationship, for me. There is this mental hang-up that I can't get past. Yes, I'm angry and hurt and resentful. And for some reason I can't get past all the hurt. Anyway, the point is, since I let him know that I'm not moving with him in January, he's been really nice to me. And I don't like it, as I don't think he's accepting my decision and it makes me feel guilty, makes me confused, wondering if I should reconsider. My mom keeps telling me that the devil you know is better than the one you don't, and she scares me when she says I might just find a new spouse but repeat the pattern with him. If I even find someone I really like at all, should I not wait to separate and leave now? Or should we continue MC and live together even though I really don't think I want to stay with him anymore? My biggest fear is holding on to those sweet moments and having false hope it will get better when it really won't. We don't have any kids, thank goodness. I think because he's such a nice guy, my family had a hard time accepting the fact that I was so unhappy. Everyone kept telling me the first year is the hardest. Can anyone elaborate on how the first year is supposed to be the hardest? I also was doubting myself, wondering if I am projecting my unhappiness on him. But I really think I have valid reasons to be unhappy in the marriage. He just won't accept the fact that I won't move with him, even though I explained it to him and told him that I want a separation when he moves back. Today he mentioned a job opening in his state that he wants me to apply to. I told him I won't be moving there. He's like, that doesn't make sense. I don't get how else to make it clear to him. He could have been nicer, but he wasn't. The reason I am feeling so guilty is because everyone kept telling me give him time. That's what happens when a guy loses his job. I kept making excuses for him. I kept thinking he may be depressed. And I think he is to some degree, though he denied it when I have brought it up. I do, however, think he has serious issues with intimacy and communication, because anytime I would express my frustrations to him, he would just shut down even more. He's never even asked, what am I not doing that you need me to do? I do believe he has different and much lower expectations of what a fulfilling relationship looks like. I realize that although his parents are still married, they live very separate lives and show little affection to each other in front of their children. So perhaps to him this is normal. I love my mom and she's generally my strongest ally, but talking to her does make me more confused. My mom is old school. So initially the idea of getting a divorce really freaked her out. But after she accepted that I am possibly going to leave him, she just keeps saying, I don't want you to look back and regret your decision to leave him. I wish it was that simple. It's not one of those clear-cut decisions where, for example, my husband is physically abusive and there really is no other option but to leave. I know that I deserve more love and affection from a spouse. But I hate how I'm made to feel that I'm running away from my problems rather than working on them. I just realized in this short marriage that you really cannot change a person unless they want to change. And I'm smarter than to think he's suddenly going to change his habits and become generous and super attentive and affectionate. So, I thought I'd give this another shot, and I decided to email him a list of questions to see if he could convince me that life with his new job in a new state will in fact be better. I sent him questions like, what's your idea of romance? How do you show a woman you love her? When I tell you my needs are unmet, do you understand what I mean? What do you think you have done to address this? How will life be different once we move? It was probably 15 questions. It's been 10 days, and I haven't gotten a response. He did acknowledge that he received it. I sent it on Friday so he could reply over the weekend, but by Tuesday I got nothing. I brought it up and he said he's been busy and that it was a million question, and why don't you answer the questions? I just don't understand him at all. He's had a second weekend to reply, and hasn't done so even though I brought up my frustration. Is this PIA behavior? Is he purposely not answering my email because I so desperately want to reply? Or is he just really intimidated, scared? He's been nice otherwise, wanting to go out together and do things together. He tried initiating again, but I just can't get in the mood. And he got really upset today and said that I am sabotaging the relationship and rejecting all his efforts to make changes. I have seen him make some changes, but they're not enough. And I have even had us take the 5 languages quiz and express to him how important words of affirmation are to me, and how he hasn't flirted with me in a long time, but he's made no effort in that regard. Update: he never did reply to my email. We had a counseling session today, and I left fuming, as did he. We've been really nice to each other the past week, so I started out by saying that. The counselor was like, wow. Well, what happened? I then had to clarify that I haven't changed my mind about the separation. He then said he was shocked by that. I explained how it's been really nice to see how sweet we have been to each other, but at the same time, I can't shake off the feeling that our core problem is still there, and that is him sweeping our problems under the rug, and a most recent example is the email. So, I have been really confused. He then proceeded to say some really hurtful things. He said, when someone is being annoying, he just shuts them out. It's like background noise to him. He gives them space so they can figure out what to do with their anger on their own. The counselor was trying to tell me not to take it personally. She said that's just his way of coping. Then we talked about the email. He said that I kept bugging him about it, turning it into an argument. I brought it up twice. I was like, I was trying to express to you that it was important to me. So, he pretty much said that I had pissed him off. So he decided not to reply. Now tell me that's not passive-aggressive. So, this is how he retaliates. It's a pattern, and I told him that, just like the card, I asked him to tell me what his rationale was. Why didn't he get me a card even though he knew I was upset that he didn't get it? He said I didn't think it was important. It's just a card. What could be written could also be said. As if he ever says those things. I told him I am telling him what I need from him. I want verbal affirmation, reassurance. The card was a way to get him to express himself to me. He didn't. He hasn't. He won't. He won't reply to the email, even after the counseling session today. I would be really surprised if he does. He's also giving me the silent treatment right now. Honestly, after hearing all he had to say today, I know I'm done. I just hope I stay strong enough to follow through. I've lived through some traumatic experiences, and I've become quite resilient. But frankly, nothing has been as hard as coming to this decision. I kept hoping he'd show me how much he cares about me, us, because I know that he loves me, and I know he has a hard time expressing it. But so much of his behavior makes me feel unloved and unimportant. I just can't deal with it. I can't deal with the silent treatment, the pouting, sulking, and stonewalling. I can't continue to not receive the validation I need. I can't deal with the lack of emotional support. I can't deal with his low emotional intelligence. It has destroyed me emotionally. I've given him so many chances. But he refuses to leave his comfort zone and do the hard work. Months later, just wanted to update you all and let you know that we've been officially separated for a month now. I felt incredibly relieved once I left and realized that I am not projecting my unhappiness onto him. I feel really good to be on my own right now. I don't know if this will soon be replaced with depression lol. I hope not. However, we have recently resumed talking on the phone, and it's funny how well we get along when it's just over the phone. I told him today that I think we should stop talking. He is really hopeful we'll get back together. So he was upset. He still called me later just to chat. I feel really heartbroken for him more than for myself. He cried twice as he apologized to me and begged for another chance last week. I just hate knowing that I'm hurting him deeply, but I am also pretty set on a divorce. I just don't know if talking to him will make me forget all the pain he's put me through. Which is why I want to cut contact. I wish I could give him another chance. He blew every opportunity I gave him. I stopped loving him when he tried kissing me before he left. I felt nothing at all. The anger I feel and the hurt is starting to subside, but every time I question my decision to leave him. I remember how I literally begged him to give me something, anything to hold on to. And he gave me none. It hurts a lot. My husband, who says one of his top love languages is touch, would not even touch me like a man who was attracted to his wife would. I did not feel desired by him. He wouldn't make eye contact, which I deeply craved. He rarely complimented me. Heck, some women complain how their H's make them feel like a piece of meat. That's better than what I was getting. We had bond about 3 times a month. I would initiate often and he would decline. I felt rejected, unloved, unattractive. I think everything combined, moving, his unemployment, his passive-aggressive nature, his low desire, his lack of interest in getting to know each other better, his lack of affection, his not showing me appreciation all led to where we are today. I have to say that the week I was packing, he started trying to win me back, begging me to stay, being a lot more physically and emotionally affectionate. That week, he said things that I hadn't heard all of my marriage. He held me as I cried, apologized and said, "I'm sorry I failed you. You mean the world to me. You're such a strong woman. And yet so fragile. But I appreciate everything you have done, including taking on the financial responsibility. I love you and can't imagine not spending the rest of my life with you. I'd be a fool to let you go. You're my queen. Please let me earn back your trust." Wow, when I say never, I really am not exaggerating. I had never throughout our turbulent marriage been told anything that he said that day in the span of 10 minutes. Except for the "I love you," I sobbed even harder and said, "I wish I'd heard this when I needed to." How hard is it to say what he said that day? Is it really so difficult for a man who is not expressive to say those simple statements like "you mean the world to me" or "I appreciate what you are doing" to the woman he claims to love so much? I remember this guy I was with. He'd be holding me and would say "my girl" in a proud way. And that alone would set my heart on fire. I really don't think I'm emotionally hard to please. Yes, I do need reassurance and affirmation. I need to feel loved by the man I had planned on spending the rest of my life with. I think what disturbed me the most was, if he's like this now as newlyweds, what will we be like 5 years from now? When kids come along, 10 years. It seemed bleak and unpromising. The buy me a card was because my birthday had passed, holidays had passed, and I got no gift or card. I simply said, "You know what I want for our anniversary? I really want you to write me a card." How else was I supposed to communicate this to him? But what about the email? He knew our marriage was at a crossroads, and he chose to be defiant. even though he claimed that he didn't want a separation or a divorce. So how are you choosing your marriage over separation when you won't even do something so simple like reassure your wife? There was a huge gap in what I expected versus what I experienced. I married him straight out of college, looking for stability, thinking he'd be the main provider while I figured out what I'd want to do with my life. Career. But since an early age, I was used to life throwing curveballs at me. I have lived in many different conditions and environments, including different countries, lost many loved ones, really had gone through much worse than the average person my age in this country. I really do believe I am one to make the best out of any situation, even if it wasn't going according to plan. I am currently living out of a suitcase lol and happier than ever. Recently I traveled with a relative and she mentioned later how much she loved my easygoing attitude and how I wasn't a fussy person at all. I think what hurt the most was how he shut me out from the beginning, and how much of a sourpuss he was about everything. He still claims that he wasn't depressed. He says he just felt disconnected. I think it'd be easier for me to accept that he was depressed because it was miserable living with him. I've come to the conclusion that he's so used to home and mom being there for him that the very thought of marriage turned him into an anxious nutcase unable to cope with setting up his own home. He is now back living with his family, and he is so happy. He is back hitting the gym, going out with friends, being babied by mom and cooked and cared for. I really think he cannot be apart from his family. Also, while I've been focusing largely on the emotional aspect of our relationship, I didn't go into other issues such as finances. A big reason I left him. I am sure he wasn't putting in all his unemployment check to the household. He claims he was. There was no way though, it doesn't add up. There was no transparency. He wasn't applying to jobs. He got offered to start his last job on 2 different occasions and declined because he wasn't ready. He also would give me major heart attacks because we'd come to a final decision about a major issue and then he would change his mind again. This happened very recently as well. How you feel about these two? My comment: stay warm and safe.